Okay, so thank you everyone today for inviting me to speak on resilience and mental health. I'm really excited to be here, and I also feel very, very honored to be speaking to a group of um, um, what Min Kiet calls to be students, but in reality, you are actually all educators. Because from what I learned from Min Kiet, that many of you are either principals or vice principals, or going to be, or in the process, or in the making. So it's really my privilege to be speaking here today. Today I want to call the talk a journey of courage, because I really think that that is what resilience and mental health conversations should be about. It's really about a journey of courage. And today, Ming Kia has already introduced me to share who I am and what I do, I actually want for all of us to ask ourselves today, who am I and who do I think I am? I ask this question because I think many of the students that you might teach or come across during your teaching or career might be asking you this question even as they start to seek about who they are, what they're going to do. And it is at those times of crisis that this question often comes up. Who am I? And who do I think I am? So even as we journey with these young people, I think it is even more important for us as educators, as mentors, as parents, to know ourselves. Who am I and who do I think I am? So today I'll be sharing with you, personal anecdotes from my own journey, and I hope that this will lend some hope and encouragement to all of you. In fact, when Ming Kiet called me the other day and he said, "Oh, we're looking for a mental health expert to speak with us on mental health," the first thing I said was, "No, no, 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 no. I am not the right person. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't have a PhD in like counseling or anything." But I told him, I said, even as he was sharing, he was so passionate over the phone. I told myself that this is a talk that I don't want to turn down, because I just like you am passionate about young people, and the person who changed my life I will reveal to you in a very short while is an educator himself. Okay, so these are some girls that I had met many years ago when I was 18 years old. And those of you who might have heard the story before will know that these are girls who were from Nepal, and many of them that I had met were abused or had been abandoned or been through some very, very traumatic childhood experiences. And at the time I was 18 years old, I really just finished my A levels, had nothing to do, and literally just asked my father. I said, would you allow me to do some volunteer work? But I also don't know what to do. I don't know who's going to take me. I have no degree. I don't know what I'm good at. And by a stroke of a miracle, really it was a miracle, because he said no many, many, many times. He finally said yes and sent me with his blessings to Nepal. And during those 6 weeks where I stayed with these girls, my life was entirely changed. It was changed because I saw how much these girls valued being loved, and how much the lives of the house parents, these missionaries who had come from very wealthy, very comfortable lives, had really sacrificed and put away all that to be with these girls. And when I think about the house parents, when I think about the sacrifices that these missionaries have made, sometimes I think to myself, like, wow, they have done so much. And it humbles me, it makes me in awe of them. But when I think of you, when I think of educators, I don't think you're that far different. You may not have left behind like, a big home, or your country, or you may not have left behind, everything that's familiar to you to move to a different country. But the fact that you're in public service, the fact that you are serving the next generation, the fact that you are teachers, you're principals, you're vice principals, you're in the education sector, I think speaks volumes of who you are and what you do. Because there are many other jobs out there that you could take, but yet you have chosen to do this. And as Minkiet shared with me, during COVID crisis, there was so many new things to learn. There was the digitization, there's engaging students over Zoom. There were so many different stresses and the pressures of life. And still you chose to stick it through. And that's why you're here today, obviously. And the fact that you have chosen to do all that, I believe, is because you made a choice to be an educator. And that for me is tremendously inspiring. So I want you to bear that in mind. What happened was that just before we left this home, I told the house parents, I said, is there anything I can do for you? Because what happened shortly before I left was that we were forced to evict. And this was a very traumatizing experience, not just for the girls, but also for me. Because in Singapore, when you move homes, it's very easy. You just call the professional movers. Actually, it's not easy at all, right? Those of you who have moved know that it is not easy at all. Even when you call the professional movers, there is so much to do. But these girls and the house parents, they were forced to evict within a very short period of time, and they had to do all the packing themselves. And I'm just asking you to imagine, like the oldest girl is like maybe 12 years old at the time, and the youngest girl is 3, and every single one of them is asked to pack. And they were all packing and stacking and packing and stacking. And literally within a few days, they had to be disenrolled from school. They had to be moved to a new place. And I told myself that surely there must have been, that there could be something that I could do, but I didn't know what, and I didn't know how. So I remember having this little dream in my heart that, what if I painted a book called Kite Song? And what if I published it? What if I used it to raise funds for these girls? What would happen? And I remember I didn't even dare to tell this dream to anyone. I held it in my heart. And just as I left the Nepali Kathmandu airport, I shared this with the house parent who was a pastor at the time as well. And he said, you know what? I believe in you. And when you go back to Singapore, I want you to meet this person. And so when I went back to Singapore, I did. But even when I met this other person that he had referred me to, I kind of felt at a loss, and I told myself, who do I think I am? I must be crazy. And as I shared this with more people, more older people whom I trusted, and I had, I hope would give me wise counsel, an overwhelming majority of them told me the same thing. They all said, you are too young to do this. They said, you don't know what's going to happen. They said, if you are in medical school, or when you become a doctor, like a surgeon or someone famous, then you can do something like that. But for now, this is too soon and it's way out of your depth. But I shared this dream with my junior college teacher. I went back to JC and I told him, I said, I dare not tell anyone this, but I'm telling you. And you know what? I've told this story so many times over the past, almost like 14, 15 years. I've never shared this before. But when I went back to my alma mater and I shared this with my JC teacher, he was the one who gave me courage. And he said, Waisha, you have to do this. You just have to. So within 3 months, the Kite Song was published, and in the next 3 months, more than $100,000 was raised for the home. And I didn't do this myself, of course. It was a whole team of people behind it. Honestly, I was just 18. I didn't even know how to do this sort of thing, So please don't give me credit for it. I honestly just produced a book. I just obeyed the calling that was in my heart, that I felt was, from God, and it just happened that way. So this is the home that my husband and I returned to. So every 2 years or so, I would go back and visit the girls. And they always made me promise that if I ever got married, I had to bring my husband. So there he is with me. And that's the home. And these are the girls who have grown up. And the girls now, many of them, they have gotten jobs. Many of them are preschool teachers. One of them is a nurse who couldn't join in the picture. But so many of them have graduated from the home, and they have, married, and they have had children. Actually, 2 of the girls have little girls, same age as mine. So they have, completely changed, and they have new leases of life. And I love this picture because this is a picture of the same girls, almost the same girls, sitting in nearly the same positions 10 years apart. And wherever I go, I've moved several times around the world. Wherever I go, I always carry this picture with me because it is such a reminder that with a little bit of faith, there is so much that can happen beyond our wildest dreams. I just want to leave this picture here for a moment. And I want you as a teacher, as a principal, vice principal, educator, just to take a step back and think for a moment, who am I a mentor to? And who am I an influence to in my life? So many people, they can only say, like, legitimately, I'm an influencer of like 2 or 3 people or 5 people or 6 people. But how many people in this world can truly be in your position and say that I oversee, a class of like 40 people. I overclass a level of like, hundreds of students. I oversee a school of hundreds or even thousands of students. How many people can actually say that? And the fact that you are here today listening to this, I really believe is not by chance. I really believe that, You have been called to this mission for a purpose. And I want to challenge you that even as you undertake this, that you will leave today remembering that it doesn't matter how small or big your dream is for your students, for the next generation. It matters that you believe in it. I believe that as you carry this with you, that is what is going to influence the young people who come under your care. Because if you don't believe in it, they cannot. I start with this, you must be wondering, so what's this got to do with mental health? When is she going to get to it? It's got everything to do with resilience and mental health and courage, I promise you. Because it is these dreams of ours, it is these dreams in the hearts of our young people that keep them and keep us going in the darkest of times. So this is something I've never shared in the dozens and dozens of talks I've given, all around, whether it's in Singapore or overseas. I've never shared this, that what I want to highlight today is the dedication of Kite Song. And that is, if you look at the first or the second page of the book, it says dedicated to Raymond James Ho. And people must be thinking, who is this person? It's not your father, it's not your mother. And of course, in various other, the reprints and all my other books, I have acknowledged my family. And for this book in particular, of course, my family played a very, very important part. But in particular, I highlighted Raymond James Ho because he was my JC school teacher. He was that JC school teacher who spoke with me, who talked with me. He was that JC school teacher who, in my darkest of times, during my junior college years, was available for me. I remember at the time I was going through some sort of a crisis. I didn't know what it was. I didn't dare call it depression, to be honest. It was maybe like some form of dysthymia, which is like, it's like subclinical depression. It's not like outright depression, but you can't really say that you're totally well. It's just like this melancholic feeling that you have that is really, really prolonged, this sense of hopelessness. And at that time, I didn't really have a spiritual faith to lean on. I didn't really know what I was going through. I couldn't put a finger on it. And how it manifested was very strange. Like, some people, it manifests by, maybe feeling very sad, crying all the time. Maybe some of your students you've seen have self-harm tendencies, or, maybe they drop out of school, they play through, they're absent in class. Those are very extreme cases. But for me, it was just this prolonged sense of melancholy. And the worst part was, it manifested itself in very good academic grades. Because the one thing that I thought I could control was my grades. And some of you here, I know you have students like that. They perform very well, but something is just not quite right, and you just can't put your finger on it. And what was happening to me at that time was that my family was unraveling. I didn't know, and I only found this out like 10 years after that event, actually, 10 years after I had graduated from junior college, actually, that during that time, my family had undergone a huge business crisis, which they kept from me because they loved me and wanted to protect me. So that was their mindset. But of course, I knew something was amiss and I couldn't put my finger on it. And so as I struggled to understand or to make sense of what was happening in school and at home, I really didn't have anybody to turn to. But yet, my GP tutor, Mr. Raymond James Ho, made himself available for me. And every evening, I remember, I would just go to his office and say, Mr. Ho, I have a GP essay for you to look at. I said, Mr. Ho, my GP is really terrible. Can you just take a look at my GP essay? And he would. But he wouldn't just do that. He would look at my GP essay and he would sit down and he would talk to me about life. And that was how a connection was made. That was how a relationship was made. And I believe that that was how my first exposure to a mentoring relationship was revealed to me. And that is why I think teachers are so important in our lives. I feel that educators have such an important role in what we do. And I really think that today you are in such an important position because you have the power to make a difference in your students' lives. So if there's only one thing that you take away from today, it is this, that you are that someone and you can help set dreams free. Even up to today, when I meet with Mr. Ho, I still can't call him James. He keeps saying, can you call me James? You're like a mother of 2 children. I say, I cannot. In my head, you're always Mr. Ho to me, And I tell him, I said, Mr. Ho, Do you know that when you think about all the girls that you had seen in the first picture, about them side by side, all that, does it boggle your mind? Does it take your breath away that you were a part of that? That it was you who inspired me to keep dreaming, to keep hoping, to keep believing in the impossible. And of course, he refuses to take credit, as all educators like yourself are. Oh, I can never take credit. It's all you. But actually, in the evenings when you are thinking about your students and you're thinking about their well-being, it really is you. So right now, I want to, this is a little bit of a transition. I've shared with you about dreams, but I also want to take you into a personal journey of mine, where I've been through and struggled with mental health. This is my husband. He is a liver transplant survivor, and he's also an Ironman. I'm very proud of him. This is my firstborn. Her name is Sarah Faith. And this is my second child, and hopefully my last. Although I think my husband hopes otherwise, but this is Esther Praise. They're both older, a little bit older now. But I'm sharing this with you because all of us come from families, and all of us come from places where we want to bring our families, we want to bring our communities, our loved ones into a place of hope and healing and joy all the time. But the fact is that seasons are not like that. And this is a picture of our backyard when we were staying in Canada for a season of time. That was before and after my further studies. My husband is Canadian, so we stopped by, and that was where I delivered my children and had some family support from my in-laws. And this picture, of course it's a photo shoot. I don't look like that all the time, obviously, but it's very precious to me because the background really was our backyard. This is indoors, of course, but we had a huge window, and this was taken during a huge snowstorm. And I'm reminded by this picture that things can look very good on the outside, but it is oftentimes the season in our lives that can be very lonely, very isolating, and can cause us to feel most alone in our darkest times, even when outside seems fine and dandy. My second daughter, Esther Praise, was born there. And actually, it was my birth of her that taught me the greatest lesson of all. In that, for both my children, and this will horrify some of you, actually will horrify all of you, I think, that for both of them, I opted to have drug-free home births. So I had both my children at home. I decided that, I know it's very ironic, I'm a doctor, but I decided that I didn't want to be in a hospital setting. Because when you're I'm sure when you're in school, it's like work for you. So imagine when I'm in the hospital, I feel like I'm at work. And I didn't want to be in my work mode when I'm having my children. I know it's very, I know it's a little hard to swallow or imagine, but I had both experiences, very beautiful, surreal experiences. Having my children at home. But the biggest, deepest lesson that I learned was this, that the greater the dream, the deeper the pain. And it is precisely in these times that you must not give up. You must lean in. I'm sharing this with you because many of you here have been through far more difficult experiences than I have in my short life. You have far more experiences. You have been through difficult, challenging life experiences that you cannot even put into words when counseling or talking to your mentees or students. But I know one thing, that the very fact that you have been through those experiences gives you the authority and gives you a platform through which you can touch the lives of others. And with that, I want to leave this with you, that when you are experiencing pain, even right now, when there's COVID and all that, all these minute stresses, they do accumulate. And sometimes it is difficult to put a finger on what it is that you're going through. And when you look back, it's like, maybe it's partly working from home, it's partly giving Zoom lectures, it's partly that you have no work-life balance anymore. It's partly all of that. And that in itself can be a source of stress or pressure or discouragement. But whatever it is, know this, that if you are being put in a particular experience, don't give up, lean in, and make use of that darkness to glean the experiences and the gems that you need. Because you know what? You're not the one who's going to be using them. It is the hundreds and thousands of students that are going to come after you and that who are under your wing. Those are the people whose lives you will touch. And unless you live the life, you cannot impart it. You can say for all you want, you have to do this, you have to do that. But if you have not lived it, you cannot impart it. And so my encouragement to you is this, is that if you yourself are going through a difficult time, then choose to embrace it because you are in the best position to impact your students. And it makes your pain purposeful. It makes it meaningful because it will set the lives and dreams of so many free. So later on, as I continue to grow and as I continue to live in different places and do different things, A Taste of Rainbow was published. It is my second book, and it was born from my struggle with anorexia and depression. So it might be difficult for you to understand how I could be anorexic, but I was extremely thin. I was in such bad shape that I basically lost a great deal of my hair, my weight. I become amenorrheic, so I stopped my periods completely. I suffered a hip fracture that was a non-impact injury, meaning that I did not have an accident, but my hip sustained a fracture. And it was so bad that when I did the scan, they told me that as an early 20-year-old, I had the bone density of a 67-year-old lady. So that was how bad it was. And in those times, I started to draw, I started to, express myself in drawings. And I decided that, you know what, as I myself found hope and healing, I wanted to encourage others to do the same as well. And so I started to compile this into a book. And the problem was that when I decided that I was ready to share my story, I realized that other people were not. Because I had a great deal of hesitation and fear. I thought to myself, okay, I'm about to graduate from medical school and I want to publish this book. And when I shared it with people around me, they said, are you kidding? They said, are you joking? This is such a terrible time to publish this because think about the stigma that you will have as a fresh graduate doctor. Are you a patient or are you a doctor? And then they said things like, now if you do this, your chances of getting into a residency, which is like a specialist degree, is going to be so slim. And it's already competitive enough as it is, Why would you want to put this on your CV? And if it goes public, this is going to be terrible. And I'm sharing this because I think the ironic part is that while many of us are educators, while many of us are in prominent positions of leadership, it is precisely us who are guilty of being afraid to get help. I've received emails through my blog, through my website, of people who are, in prominent positions of help, even health professionals and social workers who are too afraid to get help because they say, I am in a position to help others. How can I seek help? And my encouragement to you is this, is that think about it. Would it be worth it? Think about it. Would it be worth it? Because that was the question I struggled with for years. I said, eventually I took the leap of faith, with the encouragement of people who loved me, who I'm very thankful that, there were a small handful of people who said you should do it. But, after years later, after I did it, I thought to myself, was it really worth it? I thought about the talks that I gave, about the interviews that I received, and still this was a question. It was a question that was unanswered. It was a dream unfulfilled because actually I had this vision one day, and it was a very silly dream. It was so silly that I never told anybody about it. That I had a dream that one day that I would be standing in front of women, all like women overseas. In the vision, it wasn't really clear, but I had a dream that, I would be in America and that I would be speaking in an international kind of conference to women about hope and healing. And this was a huge crowd, And I thought to myself, this is a really silly dream or vision that I had, and I just put it away. I just tucked it away in my pocket. I never told a soul. I didn't want anybody to think I was, being narcissistic or silly or being too ambitious, to have a dream like that. And what happened was that I was carrying this dream with me all the way to Johns Hopkins, where I did my Masters of Public Health. And I remembered when I was there, I never wanted to tell anybody about Kitesong Global. I didn't want to tell anybody about Kitesong, the books I did, because I thought to myself, if I tell them about this, they'll think that I'm like, very fluffy, not an international public health leader, just a young lady who likes to draw and paint. So I didn't want to tell anybody. But when I was there, I felt very clear the call to start Kitesong Global as an international nonprofit. And I kid you not, that it was right when I was doing this presentation. This was the launch of Kitesong Global as a nonprofit. It also happened to be, we decided to do it on my daughter's first birthday. So she's actually like the school mascot. So you can see there are a lot of people there. I joke with people, I say, they're really there for her, not me. They're really there to celebrate her, because she was quite iconic as like a school figure. So just before the launch of Kitesong Global, I kid you not, that while I was going for the rehearsal, I received a phone call. It was very bizarre because I very rarely pick up my phone. I honestly very rarely do. But somebody called me and I picked up my phone, and it was a woman whom I didn't know. And she said, "I'm calling you from Nashville." And I was like, okay, like, are you a scammer? I don't know. And she was like, "I got your contact from a psychiatrist friend of mine who is the sister-in-law of a faculty member who is the friend of your mentor, your professor mentor at Johns Hopkins. And she happened to pick up a book called A Taste of Rainbow from her office. Are you the author?" And I was like, yeah. Like, seriously, like, what do you want from me? I'm like, there's too many degrees, of separation. And I'm like, what do you want from me? And she said, "Well, I was wondering if you would like to speak at our conference in Nashville." And I was thinking at the back of my head, this is not possible. Like, for one, I am like studying, and the chances of me being able to make it for a conference is like this slim. Plus, I need to find my family over, and logistically, it's just very difficult. And then she said, "What do you speak on? What do you like speaking about?" And then I told her, I said, "Oh, actually, I'm just preparing for rehearsal for Kitesong Global, and I like to speak about dreams, setting our dreams free." And then as I said that, she just went ballistic. Like, even though you're not in front of somebody, you can hear like when they're sort of hysterical. And this was when I could hear she was really going like, it's you, it's you. And I was just thinking to myself, okay, I thought I was mad, but I think, this lady over the phone, I don't know what she wants from me, but she's obviously sounding very, very excited. And she said, "It's you." She said, "It's you, it's you, it's you." And I was like, "What is it? What is it?" And she said that we have been hoping and praying for a keynote speaker to speak on dreams for our conference, because we are setting up an eating disorder conference, and we need a closing keynote speaker. And we wanted to end with a note of hope. And our theme was dreams. So that person is you. And we have not found anybody for months because that person is you. So we are flying you and your family over. And you wouldn't believe it, but the conference was just 2 weeks after my graduation date. And that was why I could make it. So this was the conference. And it was far more than what I had dreamt it to be in the vision. I want to leave this with you for a moment, because there are many times in our lives that our pain and our dreams don't make sense. You are in it at the moment and it doesn't make sense. And I want to encourage you that as much as you think that your life experiences might not make sense at this time, what your students are going through, it might seem very discouraging to you. Why are they going through this? Please know that at some point in time it will make sense. Now, this happened like almost 10 years after that whole episode that I had with recovery and going to see the doctors and all that, suffering from anorexia. Almost 10 years. And for those 10 years, I asked myself the question, was it worth it? And the answer was, it is, and it was, and it will be. So my call out to you today is to be brave and to step out, because you can represent hope. And if you are willing to take that first step to seek help, then all the more your students. And there is nothing to be afraid of. You don't have to feel like, oh, I'm the PE, I'm the principal, I'm the vice principal. I can't share with people that I've done this or I've done that. But you will be so surprised at the inspiration that you will be to your students, your team, and not only your students actually, but your team, your staff team. The fact that you're being brave, that you've lived it, shows your vulnerability and authenticity as a leader, which I think is so much needed today. And I'm just going to share this quick picture with you. These are my medical students, and I was teaching them last year. This is my last story now before I end off. But they brought me into a crisis. So outside, there was COVID-19, which had just hit last year. So that was the external crisis. But they brought me into an existential crisis because I jokingly told them, I said, you know what? I was trying to teach them about humanity and about how to overcome trauma in the wards. Because, you know, as doctors or as students, they see a lot of trauma, people dying of cancer, people, you know, dying of like, you know, bleeding and like hemorrhaging away. It's very traumatic. And to be honest, I had left clinical practice for 7 years because I couldn't reconcile some of the trauma that I myself had experienced, and I hadn't been able to process that. And so I left clinical work for 7 years. I went into education and public health and was very passionate about that, so I never went back. But in teaching these students, they brought me back to those traumatic days, and I thought to myself, oh dear, actually I have not really processed them, and I have not actually gotten over or overcome, because when COVID-19 happened and they called for healthcare workers to the front line, I actually was afraid to go back. And it was already a time of crisis. This was a time where, like, you know, SG, Sing Health Corps, they already sent out all these emails and newsletters and advertising, like, we need doctors, we need nurses to come to the front line. And I was like frozen. I was like, I want to do this, but I cannot. Like, something inside of me just could not move. And I was still breastfeeding my younger one. My husband is immunocompromised. At that time, we didn't have as much information back then as we do now. You know, back at that time, we weren't even sure if, you know, whether how dangerous it was. Really, there was so much unknown. So I myself was afraid. I told myself, I'm not sure if I have the courage to go back. But my students brought me to this turning point, and I felt that I had been brought to the point where I needed to face my greatest fears. And so, with my husband's encouragement, he was the one who said, you have to go. He said, you have to do this. It's the right thing to do. And so with his encouragement, I went back, and, you know, these sweet nurses, they were telling me that, Dr. Tam, they said, after leaving clinical work for 7 years, the first time you're back in clinical work, you're in full-blown PPE. So they were laughing, and I was also nervously laughing away as they taught me how to put on the PPE. But it was through this that a very interesting twist occurred, because it was then that I discovered that, oh my goodness, my passion is actually in public health and communication. And all these migrant workers, they weren't able to understand a lot of what we were sharing. And so my mentor was the one who said, you know, can you do up a booklet for us, you know, and put something together pictorially in different languages. And because Kitesong Global was set up, you know, Kitesong Global, we have resources like books and toolkits and videos. So this is something that we already have the infrastructure to do it. And so with me and my team and volunteers that we recruited in Singapore and around the world, you know, we created different kind of healthcare resources for migrant workers who have been quarantined and isolated. And before I knew it, I started to carry activities out with migrant workers. And this is a Kitesong workshop that I'd done with them. And this is the same workshop I do in, like, you know, organizations, in schools, in churches, where we, and in hospitals, where we bring participants through a talk like this, like what I'm giving to you now, and also the book itself, and then finally a very meaningful facilitation session. And this is what they have been through. And very soon it was a birth of a movement. It became like a snowball into like a nationwide thing. And this picture is meaningful to me because it was taken by, I didn't ask my friend to take it. It was just this person who was there, and he was like, okay, wait, I want to take a picture of you. And he said, he gave this picture to me as a gift. And he said, I just want you to remember how happy you were when you were back here. And I share this with you because so many of us are afraid to face our greatest fears. We are afraid that if we confront our greatest fears, that we will be seen as weak. That if we confront our greatest fears, people will laugh at us or say that, you know, you shouldn't do this. But I want to remind you that as you do so, that is when the greatest fulfillment can sometimes be found. So as the work grew, you know, the volunteers started blossoming and the work was growing. I didn't realize that I had my day job as an educator researcher at at my workplace, but also I had this job. And then also because of the lockdown and all that, I was also like a full-time mom in some way. Although I mean parents are all full-time, right? Whether you work or not, you're all full-time. But what I mean was I also had to cook and clean and juggle the kids at home, and we couldn't bring them out. It was really I'm sure many of you can relate to this. So there was massive burnout. And last year, I suffered 4 rounds of burnout. It got to a point where I decided that this was enough and I could not live like this anymore. This is my family. And I made a decision that day that for the well-being, not only of the migrant workers, or not only for my family, but for the greater good of everybody and myself, that something had to change. And so this is the story that I want to end, in that you have the power to say the right yeses. But to do so, you have to say no. This is the hard thing, especially in Singapore. And that is to set boundaries and to shift them when you need to. This was the hard part. I was like project leader of like this project. I was like, lead of this and lead of that in school. And honestly, I always felt like I was indispensable. I was always told there is no one else who can do this job except you, Wai Jia. And let me tell you the truth that I've discovered. No one can do the job that you do because nobody else, they have not discovered anybody else because you are in that job. So some of you are going to be very nervous. Should I ever give this talk to your staff? Because you might be thinking, oh no, now they're going to say no to me. But I promise you that when you start to say no, when you learn to set boundaries, then you can say the right yeses. And since then, things have changed so much. Instead of me doing every single thing, I now have a team. Instead of my family suffering, my family is now thriving. And instead of working full-time, which in Singapore full-time means like 1.5 times actually, I have scaled back and I earn a smaller income. And by the way, I earn a part-time income where all 4 of us are sustained by it. But we somehow have been happier, we somehow have been more fulfilled. And I realized that it's because of the importance of saying no. When you say the right no's, then you can say the right yeses. So my share is coming to a close, but I want to share this video with you. And please tell me if you can hear the sound, but this is the story of Kite Song.
Kite Song. I like kites. I like to fly kites because they make me feel so free. So free. There is a kite song within me that will not be still. Higher and higher my kite goes, but how unpredictable the winds can be. Kites, like dreams, slip away so easily. Run, run for your dreams. Keep running. Don't stop. It's never easy to realize your dreams. Sometimes it feels like everyone is laughing at you. And nobody believes in you. It feels like you'll never be good enough for anyone or anything. Even when you try so hard, the world can be so very unforgiving. Lost dreams are never really lost, just hard to find. Trials can be beautiful things. They make our dreams seem further and dimmer, and altogether impossible. But when we take the leap and reach the end, weary and exhausted, our dreams are often more beautiful. Than we ever thought they would be. Kite songs are singing in the sky.
As I come to a close, I just want to share that you have the power to release dreams, not just for yourselves, but for thousands of students that are going to come after you. Would you be willing to say yes? Say yes to courage, be brave. Now, I want to share this just as a last part in that these videos and all that, they have been done for students, and these are toolkits that we've put together to actually help students, come to understand or talk about conversations about mental health, resilience, about difficult topics. And to be honest, it was those times I remember during my secondary and JC school days when I had all these talks by other people, outside of the school curriculum that opened my eyes to the possibilities. And so as I continued to journey, one of my hopes was that as we captured these stories in videos and in book form, that people like yourselves who have your own stories to tell, can carry this out with your students. So if you enjoyed today, if you felt that you have been touched in some way and you want to bring this to your students, it's actually possible, not just to hire a speaker or have me or whatever, but you yourself can be empowered to do this. So Ming Kiet, we can share this a little bit with them, but these are some of the questions that I've asked my students. Which pages resonated with you the most? What have been some of the trials in your life that have caused you to let go of your dreams? And what has today's session inspired you to dream of and pursue again? And if we had more time, I would love to have conducted this with you. But these are some questions that are possible to break students up in small groups and have them discuss. And we have different topics, mental health, dreams, family of origin issues, and success versus significance, so different things. Yeah. So with that, I'm going to end my talk today, and I want to leave this time for questions and answers. So thank you all very much for being here with us. It's such a privilege once again. And if anything, if there's only one thing, although I hope there were a few things that you took away, because I said that a few times, if there's just one last takeaway that you bring away from today's talk, it is you have the power to release your dreams. And will you say yes to that? Yeah. So thank you all very much.